Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, thank you for joining us on Fans Without Credentials. I am Eric Huffman, joined with Tom Clementson. Again, just a quick reminder to everyone joining us, no elites allowed in this place. Get out of here if you think you're going to force your opinions upon us. We don't want you. Thank you very much. Moving on. We've got a fun show for you today. We're going to get into some MLB action, and Tom will also get into closing out on the NCAA men's tournament, including Michigan basketball winning the title, and basketball in the state of Michigan in general. Where do we go from here now that the season's over, including your big teams that were Michigan State going forward here from now on. And then after that, we'll get into a few final thoughts on the Red Wings. But right now, as I say that silently, Tom is going to take a look at the Michigan sports preview right now. So, Tom, please take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So, the elites, go ahead and step out at this point because we're just going to have a little fun with sports because it's supposed to be fun, right? Pistons wrapping up their regular season on the road tonight. They've got Indiana and a chance to hit 60 wins. Yeah, Eastern Conference top seed already wrapped up, and they're going to open the playoffs with one of those play-in winners, Miami, Philly, Orlando, or Charlotte. One of those four teams. We don't even know how they're set up to play each other yet. They've got some games to play across the NBA today that should solidify all that. I think 6 o'clock was the start time, so some of those already underway. Charlotte, Pistons sent them a little message the other night, 118-100 win. Very physical, but very disciplined as well. That was on Friday night. So we'll see if the Hornets did their homework and how things work out for them in the play-in. Dangerous team, but Pistons handled them just fine. Tigers broke their skid on Friday, a 2-0 shutout win over Miami. Followed that up with some offense and a 6-1 drubbing yesterday, and an 8-2 final today with Tarek Skubal on the mound for the Tigers. And it was great to get a 3-game sweep, especially after some bumps and bruises in Minnesota of all places. But just something to point out, the Florida Marlins are at the bottom of the league in payroll. So $73 million. They are the caboose on this train, and of course that's about 1/3 of what the Tigers have spent on their roster at number 10 in the rankings. So
makes you wonder if you get what you pay for.
With what you will. And Eric is going to break all that down coming up in just a little bit. KC coming to town tomorrow. They're going to have a 3-game set at Comerica, and we're looking forward to that. Maybe a better test of where the Tigers are. Ironically, though, if you think about it, you've got Cleveland sitting at the top of the division. Cleveland, who is second from the bottom in payroll for Major League Baseball this season. So interesting stuff. And the Red Wings dropped 5-3 last chance game yesterday against New Jersey at the Little Caesars Arena. And that is it for them on the playoffs. Eric's going to have some comments on that. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. Panthers coming up, Lightning tomorrow night, Panthers on Tuesday, and that'll close out the season. But they're all done at home. And that is your Michigan sports preview. So here's the question for you, Eric.
Yes, sir.
Do the Wings going down to Florida, do they bring hockey sticks or are they packing golf clubs? Because just get an early start on things.
I say you double pack at least. Obviously, take the essentials for the game and then make sure and just stay. I think I'm more worried about my golf clubs than how many hockey sticks I take with me right now.
Well, we'll take a look at the hockey stick situation in a little bit, but definitely I'm looking forward to giving you some final thoughts on the NCAA men's tournament and some of the shade falling in Ann Arbor with these guys. And Eric, we'll get into that in a little bit. How about you bat lead off? And is this a hangover situation for the Tigers, or is this destiny for a struggle here in this upcoming season?
We'll get into that here in a minute. With the way the season's been for them, up and down. Real quick, though, quick shout out to our buddy Jared Stamen, not here with us this week, out east, having a good time with some family stuff going on. So we miss you, buddy, and we'll have him back here next week. So moving on from that, before we get into the MLB mess, real quick, I did coach girls basketball for a while, and so I have to give it up real quick to the UCLA women's basketball team, national champions. They didn't just win, they dismantled South Carolina, 79-51, bringing home the program's first ever title. Massive shout out to the MOP, Lauren Betts, and for Gabriela Jaquez for dropping 21 in the finale. Now UCLA, Tom, that makes it officially 126 national titles. So the champions made here slogan seems to be alive and well at UCLA.
Right. Yeah, it's been a while.
So, after that shout out, let's get right in to MLB. And I want to quickly get back into the ABS for a quick few minutes here, Tom, only because I saw something that kind of jumped off at me. As 26 seems to be faster and smarter, but the human cost seems to be mounting in a few ways. But with the ABS, there's a fact out there that there is a walk rate that is 10% currently, which is the highest in decades with this ABS system. And is the challenge system fixing the game, or could it possibly make it unwatchable? And my angle with this here is, the hitters aren't hitting; they're just kind of waiting. And sometimes they're kind of like it's part of the game with playing the guessing game with the ABS too. It's almost like they're waiting, concentrating more on than just the pitcher as well too. And so you get it. Are we going to end up with what they call the three true rules or three true outcomes grind, which it's either strikeouts, home runs, or walks? Are we going to get into that? Or are we going to end up with something? I believe you have a quick video clip from me where you get a lot of confusion and frustration when you end up with a bunch of this.
Mooney takes a ball, and Patrick Bailey's challenging this one.
San Francisco is challenging the ball call. Please be a student.
Ooh. That one is, what is that?
It's a tiny bit low.
The call is correct. San Francisco has no remaining challenges.
Take it for what it is. I mean, it's right there. I mean, look at the umpire himself. I mean, he on the hot mic, he's like, oh, probably shouldn't have said that. Maybe we're going to open up Pandora's box here a little bit more. What are your thoughts after another week of watching the ABS?
Yeah, so I think it's an easy adjustment. You've got to adjust the strike zone, right? So this is the first time that you've had any kind of precision with regards to the balls and strikes in the strike zone, or consistency at least, right? And so I think it's much easier now to make an adjustment and make that strike zone a little bit bigger, because what we're seeing is, it's a lot of those little fringe pitches that typically would have gotten called a strike. Maybe we just need to make the strike zone bigger. And there was some talk about, well, if it's close, then maybe you just go, if it's only a millimeter off the, okay, so, where do you draw the line there? So, I mean, I like to have clear, very distinct rules, very, very objective, very clear and precise. And ABS gives us that a lot more than the human eye. And we've seen cases where guys, umpires have missed a call 3-4 inches off the plate and they've had it wrong.
Has it become somewhat of a sideshow early? Because it's like you get a lot, especially in the first inning. You'll see some of these teams possibly losing their challenges early on in the game because right away in the first inning, we're going to set the standard now. First time we see an opportunity, challenge. And I think I was listening to the Tigers-Minnesota game the other day, and I think it was Dickerson was talking about that Minnesota could lose their challenge in the first inning. I think they tried it 2 or 3 times.
Well, I think it kind of works. It should work a little bit like the NBA, right? How they've got coaches' challenges on fouls and such. If you get it right, you're not going to be penalized if you're out to left field. Because look, I mean, it could easily be used for a competitive advantage to slow the game down, and so you don't want to entice them to do it. And at the same time, if an umpire is having a bad day, you don't want to have to. I mean, if it's consistently bad calls all game long, and you're going to be limited, I mean, that's a problem too. So, I mean, that's something they could potentially look at. And as far as being a sideshow, it's new. Right. I mean, we kind of had this conversation as fans a year ago when the pitch clock came up to the big leagues. And, you still have some little weird things with that, with a pitch clock violation the other day. We talked about it last week. It actually caused a run to score at the end of the game. And that was it. Game over. And you hate to see it end that way. Yeah, but the reality is, I mean, we're kind of used to it, and I think we'll get used to this. And again, if it speeds up the game, it hasn't delayed it at all. If it's more precise and it will stop these incessant arguments and maybe kind of limit some of the ego checks that you see with players and umpires normally when they're arguing balls and strikes. There's no argument now. I mean, it is what it is.
Right. You just wonder. It's like a side game, though. It just looks like sometimes it's like it's like another type of strategy that just adds another element to the game.
Well, Earl Weaver would probably hate it because it would have cut down on his trips out to home plate to kick dirt on the umpire's shoes. So
yeah. Well, you go along with balls and strikes. Let's get into a little bit of an arm pandemic going on right now, Tom. You've got 3 pitchers already out for the year with Tommy John surgery. It seems like velocity at all costs seems to be the scenario right now. And the wonder is it a suicide mission? And our roster expansions or the opener era the only way to save these elbows? Because, I mean, my question to wrap around this is, are you more interested, Tom, in a guy that can throw 102 for 2 seasons or somebody in the 90s that can last 10? Because to go along with that.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of go back to, the days of Randy Johnson and Greg Maddux, right? Like, I mean, look at JV, right? Verlander's a great example of a guy who threw some ridiculous heat. And what was crazy about him as a young pitcher, I mean, Verlander, he would just escalate the velocity as the innings wore on. I mean, he was throwing 94, 95 in the early going. And by the 7th inning, he's chucking them at 98, 99,
yeah. But remember Joel Zumaya though. I mean, that was nothing but 100 heat. How long did he last? And he was more
Yeah, I think part of the thing too, and I mean, I'm no physiologist, but I would wonder if not so much the velocity is the issue as the spin rate that they're trying to get on these balls, and the release points and the arm angles don't have something to do with that. And again, I'm not like
not everyone
Dr.
can throw
Newman.
that. Yeah, not everyone can throw that 12-6 Verlander curve. That just stops.
Well,
and
I mean,
drops on you.
Yeah, we talk about velocity, but there's still a lot of pitchers that are effective that are throwing 94,
right.
94 mile an hour 4-seamer. I wonder because, again, I think a lot of pitching coaches are looking at the spin rate on these balls, and that's a whole different ball game. I mean, literally, when you're trying to manipulate the movement like that, it's I got to wonder if that's not part of the problem.
Well, we're going to move on from MLB as a whole, and let's dive into the Tigers themselves a little bit here. But I got a buy or sell for you, Tom, going into this part of MLB.
Okay.
Yes, buy or sell. Tigers finish April above 500 despite the injuries to Verlander and Meadows. Verlander's sideline and the offense, until we just saw this sweep, seemed to be on life support. So give me your take on it.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think that you've got a competitive Kansas City team that's coming into town tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
They're right in the thick of things. And again, thick of things is relative to the fact that this is the first real month of the season. But Kansas City's a decent team. Chicago is a much improved team, and they're right on the heels of Kansas City. I believe they're coming up in the next week or two. So they'll either get the White Sox at the end of the month or going into May. I don't see it, man. I don't see it. I think they caught a break to catch Miami right here, and be able to just kind of feast those bats. And hopefully what it's done is it's given some of these guys a little bit of confidence, and they can be a little more competitive because the Twins, I mean, they're not that good of a team at all. Which is why.
But we say we are, though. Come on, too early to tell. But yes, you would think that they're not that good.
Yeah, and again, the water will always find its level, and so we'll see that with Minnesota. The question is, we've got good pitching if we can, get it healthy again. I think Harris did a good job in the offseason with that, but the question is, are they going to have the offense?
You're right. Yeah, I'm going to reference AJ Hinz here real quick, quoting, "We're putting a lot of pressure on our arms to be perfect. Although you had, I think Riley Green finally hit a home run yesterday, and your boy McGonigal hit one today for his first one. But with the lack
Yeah.
of home runs, though, Tom, are we pressing now, or are they just not built for the modern power game, or we're just waiting for it to come around?"
I don't know. I don't think that's the case. I think, I think it was Dan Petrie was talking about it on one of the games in the last couple of days, was talking about the launch angle for these bats, and what he's kind of noticed is a little more of an even swing. Guys are just trying to get the ball in play right now, and in the right count, you'll see him take a big hack. But for the most part, these are guys that are they're trying to get on base. The problem is when you play that kind of game, you need to have a lot of guys making contact and putting the ball in play to have a chance for that to work.
Well, you've got,
yeah. I mean, look. Yeah, go ahead.
I think your best player going into this series so far this season was Colt Keith.
Yeah,
I think
he was good.
I think he was your number one player so far, where you're kind of looking for, okay, when is Green going to step up? How many times have we said torque bomb yet this season? Carpenter is more than capable. I mean, I think I've got Gleyber Torres on one of my fantasy teams. I think he was like 0 for the century and today, and finally got a hit, and I praised him for it.
Yeah.
So,
Javi Baez is having himself a nice little season to start.
I think if anyone watched last week's show, I have 4 fantasy baseball teams, and I have Baez on another team, not on the same one as Javi Baez, or Gleyber Torres, that is. Yeah. But moving on with the pitching, though, Tom, the starters have the lowest ERA in the AL, but the team has had the worst win percentage in the division going into this weekend. And my worry is middle relief. I think starting pitching, I think we're okay, and we will be okay. And boy, we got the closers seem to be could be setting up nicely to have more than one, which would be nice for having the cupboard not bare there when you need someone to close out. But that 6th, 7th inning area seems to be that bridge to nowhere, where I believe the middle relief is surrendering the lead in 60% of the losses so far this year. Is there anything that can be done with that? Do we need to move anybody around? Or are we waiting, or just waiting it out because we're only 2 weeks in?
I mean, I think you're kind of waiting for some guys to get healthy. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of depth in the farm system with pitching, right? You got some bats. We got a lot of redundancy in certain positions in the farm system. If there's a criticism for not making some moves at the trade deadline last year to pick up a bat, that's one of them. 3 decent catching prospects, and I think they sent one, but didn't really get a whole lot back. I mean, I don't know. It's I feel like it's a little bit early. Some of these guys too are just starting to get themselves stretched out, right?
Yeah,
their
what is it? I think the ERA today was 3.95, which leads the AL, but yet the team or starters lead the AL with ERA, but the team is 6th overall.
Yeah, I mean, the big challenge too, whether you're middle relief or late relief, unless you're coming in the 9th inning to save a game. The challenge is usually these guys are coming into a pretty rough situation.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Right?
You've got a few instances where they've gave up big runs early. But you've also had it where they've had a lead, and all of a sudden you're coming from behind in late innings because middle relief failed. I'll hit this stat to you real quick, and why I brought that up. In 8 losses, 5 of those were blown between the 6th and 7th. So you've got your middle relief that you've got to shore up, to take care of. You've got your bookends, and you just got to take care of that middle part.
Yeah, it's really the setup guy is what you described right there, right? And so we've got a really good one in that. I mean, and he was sick for a little while, and I think he, the other day when Will Vest was out there, his velo was down a very noticeable amount. I think he's still kind of trying to recover from whatever it was that got him, the bug that got him. But I mean, Will Vest I think he's going to be solid once he gets himself well and right. He's a great guy to set up Stanton, for example, or, he's a guy that can go in and close too. Yeah, I mean, as far as the middle guys, I don't know. I feel like they've got some potential. They just got to get their legs under them a little bit. And again, I mean, defense is going to have to play a little bit better too, right? I mean, for the most part, they've been okay, but we've seen some gaffes out there. I mean, and one of them resulted in Meadows with a broken arm and on the DL
we'll get into that. We'll get into that real quick here with a question here in a second. But we'll close out to that middle relief, as the Tigers had a nice lead today. They put some middle relief in there to close out the game, and they gave up a home run before it was over. Just FYI.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, getting into let's get into that collision for a second between Green and Meadows with what goes on in the outfield from there. Do you put Riley Green back in center? Or can you trust Wencel Perez? What do you think?
I think you put Javi Baez back.
Yeah, I think they put him back there. I think he needs to stay there. Yeah.
I mean, he plays the position, I mean, just as well, if not better, than most of those guys. I would, maybe he doesn't have quite the breakneck speed that you've got in a Riley Green kind of guy, but listen, he anticipates the ball off the bat much better than Riley Green, and you notice this because there's a lot of those times where we see Green make a very athletic play, a diving catch. Yep. Well, sometimes it's just a fantastic play, and sometimes he's just trying to catch up because he didn't read it well. And he has to do that. He has to lay it out in order to get caught up. I mean, it's not all the time, but it's enough. And, I think one of the things you got with Javi is just a better anticipation of ball off bat.
Well, I'll close the MLB section out with this, Tom. Can the Tigers survive the early hole syndrome? If they've been capable of scoring, and we bring up the weekend enough already, but they have had problems scoring with their batting. If they don't score early, does the bullpen burn out by June?
No, I think you've got a really good pitching coach with Fetter. I think AJ is dialed in. I mean, those guys do a really good job being able to plug and play with what they have, and they've got more assets this year, even with the injuries. JV probably back in a few days. We'll see how Reese Olson comes along and whatnot. Casey Mize looked pretty good coming back. Yeah. From an injury, pretty significant injury last year. So yeah, I'm sure he did. Yeah, and we'll see what happens with Job. As the season kind of goes on. But I mean, I feel pretty good about the guys they got there. I don't see. I mean, AJ will go to pitching chaos again before he burns anybody out by June. I don't think that'll happen.
Well, again, that'll do it for the MLB section of the show today. Tom, I think you've got something with the college basketball you want to get into for this next segment, huh?
Yeah, so first of all, what a game Monday night.
Yeah,
I tell you what, Dan Hurley is one of the most irritating people on the planet. He's such a weirdo. But homie can coach, and that UConn team was legit. Give him lots of credit because they had the game that he wanted and that they needed to play. He even said it at the halftime when they talked about, how you feeling about where you're at now at half. He's like, we've got the game that we need, and this is the only way we're going to be able to win. And he was right. Unfortunately, though,
he is a great strategist.
For sure,
man. But that just goes in line with the strategist at the other side of that game, which was Dusty May, the strategy of putting this team together and where they ended up. But this is your segment, Tom. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, well, you hit it right on the head. This thing that he put together, and this is kind of the thing that's a little bit irritating. And you see it anytime somebody's crowned a champion. You'll have people with their sour grapes. But obviously, it's a home state team that won it, and it feels like a lot of the sour grapes and moaning and complaining is coming out of East Lansing, and And honestly, I mean, okay, you got a reason to be disappointed. It's another situation where you get to, only so far into the tournament, and it's another trip home, and you have talent on the roster, but you've got a very different coaching philosophy in East Lansing than you do in 2026 in Ann Arbor. And that's the difference. And you've got to be real about the fact that, what is this, the fourth trip to the finals since Izzo won his last championship?
And we were talking about that before. Yeah.
I mean, and it's a tough pill to swallow.
One behind total Final Fours now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, Bayline couldn't get it done, but he got him there, a couple of times. And Howard got Bayline's team there once. And let's be very clear, that was Bayline's team.
You say Bayline couldn't get it done. And for those people watching here, you can see the state thing behind me. But I'm a big advocate just for basketball in general. Let's not forget the Trey Burke layup, or the block on Trey Burke was not a block. Yeah. So I believe Michigan might have got cheated out of one other title too.
Well, at the end of the day, there's 5 or 6 plays you could have made and it wouldn't have been an issue.
Yeah.
That block would have just been a block and of no consequence.
Yeah.
But the reality is, and there's a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon. Let's put the Michigan football team aside for a minute, because the football team is completely on an island of misfit toys all by itself. The people that kind of orchestrate sports in Ann Arbor, that Michigan thing is a different animal than any of the other teams on campus. And what I mean by that is, it's not the code of silence or the long gray line you got to worry about when you're talking about the basketball, hockey teams, etc. I mean, Dusty May has done a great job with that team, but a couple of the things that I keep hearing out there, they bought the title, right? It's a mercenary team. Player development, isn't a thing for Michigan. They don't care about player development. It's all about the portal. And then the other thing is, well, they get all the calls, and it's one of the arguments out there too that isn't really against Michigan, but is it innovation or is it obsolete?
You're going to make me put my coach's hat on for a minute there in regards to that, because
well, let's start with the first one, though.
Yeah,
let's start with the first one. So the first myth being that they bought the title.
My first answer to that will be, if they bought a title, why did all the teams spending $10+ million not make the Final Four?
So the reality is Michigan was number 9 as far as Division I NCAA teams in NIL spending. Number 9. Ahead of them was Kentucky with more than twice what they had. Kentucky was at the top of the board at $22 million. And what did we see from Kentucky in the tournament? Well, we didn't. Wow. Indiana was the other Big Ten team that spent more in NIL than Michigan. And what did we see from Indiana this year? Right? So when you look at the money spent versus the result, what I would tell you is Dusty May was a whole lot more efficient in how he selected talent. You can talk about that as a coach.
Good call on that, because I have efficiency on here as part of the argument, because Michigan's championship seemed to be more per value of the dollar. I mean, take a look at Elliot Cadeau, a cast-off from one of my schools, North Carolina, who had was he 2 for 14 in the first half, ended up being most outstanding player. Is that correct? Look at Ade Mara. I mean, he was a castaway from UCLA. I don't even know if they knew he was on the team still when he transferred. And now the country's top shot blocker under May. You've got to have somebody in place that can get these kids to come there, and then get them to buy into your system and get them to understand what your philosophy is about. And they've got to buy in. And I've said this many times, and even when I've talked about high school sports too, it's like, just about any coach's philosophy will work, but you've got to get the kids to buy in, because if they don't buy in, it doesn't matter who you are. If they don't like you or play for you, you can be the greatest coach and sent from the heavens, but if they don't believe you, you're not going anywhere.
Well, and it's not just whether they believe you, it's whether they believe in each other. And so when we talk about what is a mercenary, well, a mercenary is a hired professional that comes in to do the job, irrelevant and irrespective of any of the people in the supporting cast.
Yeah.
What's the mission? What am I paid to do? Let me execute that mission and take care of that. There's no concern about being developed. There's no concern about, relationships and interpersonal dynamics. It's all about, let me go in there, take care of business, accomplish the mission, and I'm out. And it's all about me.
The sour grapes just seem to be, what have you done for me lately? Because Michigan just turned it around in a year or two, and State's been trying to do it since 2000.
So put your coaching hat back on for a second, Eric. When you're coaching a team, what is the hardest thing to get them to buy into with regards to the phase of the game that's the most difficult to get them to play well?
Defense.
Absolutely.
Here's the thing.
Dusty May took 11 guys from completely different backgrounds and got them to buy in to his philosophy and buy into each other and have the nation's number one defense.
I can create scorers. I can teach somebody how to shoot a layup and make a basket. I can't teach them to mentally play defense. That is all a matter of will. You've got to, and it's one of those things that doesn't show up in the stat book or in the newspapers or get the analysts to run highlights for a lot of the times, because just nice, straight, standard man-to-man defense, just playing good, hard-nosed defense, doesn't get your name in the paper most of the time. Everybody's looking out for their points or assists or rebounds or something like that. It's the intangibles that make you that all-around player. And Dusty May got them to play both ends of the floor too.
Well, and in his post-game press conference, I mean, that's exactly what he talked about, what these guys were willing to sacrifice for each other. So let's hear from Dusty.
It's when you bring a group this talented together and they decide from the beginning that they're going to do it this way and they never waver and they never change. That's probably the most uncommon thing in athletics now, and it's a tribute to their character, but also those in their circles around them, their coaches, their parents, their mentors. They allowed these guys to give themselves up for the group, and it's never guaranteed, but for these guys to cut down the nets after all they sacrifice is pretty special.
I mean, when you hear that, I mean, it hits all the points that you were kind of talking about from your perspective as a coach, and it's no wonder you were a coach of the year in your run there over in Harbor Springs or Harbor Light.
Harbor Light Christian.
So, yeah, absolutely. So, but yeah, I mean, that's one of the things you've got to have is these guys not only have to buy into you as the coach and believe in your philosophy, but they've really got to believe in each other. And, the other aspect of this mercenary discussion is Yaxel Lindenberg answers it best. I mean, they talk about, how these guys are mercenaries, and a lot of people expected major friction with the program, and that was not his experience at all. So we'll let Yaxel kind of explain that.
Nice.
Once we transferred in, I know, especially for me, the whole University of Michigan welcomed me with open arms. I've seen many Twitter arguments of these guys going back and forth with everybody saying, like, we deserve the spot here, and they're going to cherish every moment of us being here. And shout out to Will, Roddy, Namari, LJ, especially those guys. Once we all got together, they were super genuine with us the whole way. They tucked us in under their wing, and they showed us the Michigan way.
I mean, at the end of the day, I guess the last thing that I kind of want to talk about as far as Michigan's concerned before we get on to, what about Michigan State? Because, I'm a Michigan fan, but I'm rooting for Michigan State basketball whenever we don't have our game with them, right? I mean, Izzo is an icon. You can't, even Michigan fans have to respect him. We don't necessarily have to like the crying that he's done the last couple of years, but we'll get into what they can do in East Lansing. But the biggest thing is it's a new day in college basketball, and I think Dusty May coming in after Juwan Howard and having basically bare cupboards did what he had to do to put a good roster together. And I think I think he did a good job, in terms of trying to develop the talent that stayed. I mean, Will Cheddar still played some meaningful minutes and was an important vocal leader on the team, even if he was coming off the bench as the seventh guy or whatever. He got a lot of minutes, and I was really impressed with his play. I was more impressed with his leadership, and that kind of is a reflection of the coaching, in my opinion. One of the other things too, though, they talk about was the referees, obviously calling calls for Michigan. Listen, people get calls, and sometimes it goes your way, and sometimes it doesn't go your way. The difference is if you have depth, quality depth on your team, Cadeau can get 2 fouls right off the bat, and you've got Yaxel, who can play point forward better than I've seen it ever played in college with a guy that size. Up until the injury, they had another point guard who was pushing Cadeau for starting time, right? You've got 3 centers, basically 3 guys that can play centers. And when we talk about development, like that's another important point that you brought up, and they're just mercenaries. No, man. And Michigan does a great job developing these guys. You pointed out Cadeau, you pointed out Mora. Here's the reality. Neither one of those guys even had a chance to sniff the NBA before they showed up and played for Dusty May. And they'll be the first ones to tell you that. You can go through the archives and hear their comments in press conferences. Yaxel Winterberg probably, even at UAB, he was somebody that, most people figured he'd be in the NBA. Now he's looking to be a lottery pick. So part of it's the profile of the school, but the other part of it is developing as a player.
That may also validate why he left UNC, as they have hired a new coach and fired their previous one after he left. So I'm going to put a button from my standpoint on this section and then let you continue on. Calling Dusty May the mercenary master, he did build that 37-3 team with a plus 114 point margin in the tournament. By the way, Tom, using guys who hadn't met a year ago. I'd love Tom Izzo, though, being that legacy builder and prioritizing the holistic development in 4-year chemistry. He had that one run there for a while where all of his 4-year players played at least one Final Four a while back. For several years that happened. And from that sour grape standpoint, Tom, from MSU, the fans are upset because Michigan did in 1 year what they've been trying to do for the last 26. I believe I said that once already. And as far as your portal, Michigan didn't just take the best available, they took the best fit. And so it's not like I don't need an all-star. I need the one that's going to fit what I need for here. And obviously plug and play players that want to learn, look what you get in the end. And so it's not a mercenary attitude. It's a culture. And so one of the things that I think, real quick, but here's my thing from Michigan State, real quick though, the refusal to embrace the 1 year roster seems to be holding them back from championships, possibly.
Yeah, you could say that, if Izzo had been able to bring in, one of these top centers available, that changes the dynamic and creates a better physical matchup in the paint with Michigan. If you look at the starting 5 for Michigan State, right? Jeremy Fears, he's trying out in the NBA. He's projected to maybe go by the end of the first round, most likely a second round pick.
Well,
right? He's not the best point guard in the Big Ten.
No, but after this year, if he sticks around, no matter what, he's getting paid.
Well, and he's getting paid now.
Yes.
And that's the thing. I think he's doing about 1.5, between 1.5 and 2 million. So it's not like he's hanging out because he likes the coffee in East Lansing, right? Like, he's also getting paid, and as much as maybe some other guys in that position. No, but if you ask professional experts, and a lot of the opinions are out there, that he's actually getting paid a little more than what he's worth at the moment.
Right. You're getting player retention over at State, and you're getting a return on investment down the road.
So yeah, for sure. And then you look at Carr, who's another player that I like because you've seen him make some big strides year to year.
Yeah.
Likely coming back for his senior year. And he has to, because again, this is a guy that is right now projected, if he was to come out now, is a G League guy. Bottom line, he's just not there.
No.
He's made some big improvements in another
the
year.
outside shot looks better, but it takes time to shoot. In the NBA, you don't have 3 seconds to get that shot off.
Right. Well, that's it. And I think where Izzo can really help his team is be strategic about how he uses the portal. I'm not saying, he shouldn't go and try and replicate exactly what Dusty May did. Number one, he's got good players already, but I wonder if having quality guys come in, it's not your money, Tom. Spend the money. That's what the money's for, right?
Well,
spend some money
and it's right in your wheelhouse, Tom, because one of the notes I found or stats is there were over 1,000 players entered in 24 hours. So there is some stuff out there, and just seems to be Michigan set the gold standard for it.
Well, I mean, there was 1,200 players or so, I think, by the end of the press conference after the championship game, man. It's ridiculous. We saw the same thing, though, when Indiana hoisted the trophy, for football. Well, it was the same thing.
Well, yeah, you had what, Nick Marsh, escape Michigan State and go over there, where he got in trouble for wearing gold shoes.
Signetti is not going to play around. Somebody should have sent the kid a memo like, hey, man, he's not the one.
Don't mess with Gen X.
I think for sure, right? I think if Izzo was strategic about how he used it, so you don't have, and this has always been his concern this year, was what happens if Fears gets into foul trouble or something happens, he gets injured. There's no other guy.
Yeah.
Well, bring one in. Find a Cadeau out there, and if you got to pay him a little bit, that's what the money's for. I mean, Michigan State has got a big shot in the arm for their athletic department, and it would be a crime if they didn't use some of that money to help build that team out. And I'm not saying you overhaul the roster with transfers, but if you put a couple of key pieces in there, one, you get some more size down low, and you get some redundancy at the point guard, the one guard, a guy who maybe plays well off the ball but can easily step in and give Fears some time, and continue to recruit good ball players. They've got a McDonald's All-American coming, or a projected All-American, a McDonald's player coming in next year. He's done a great job recruiting again, but you got to augment it. And if you really, because, give them all the credit for being loyal. Sometimes being loyal is not helpful. I think it's a little misguided in this way. If he really wants to love those guys, he is going to do everything he can to make them better. And if that means bringing other guys in to push them harder, then that's what you got to do. If that means getting in their grill, then that's what you got to do. If it means Fears has got to sit after kicking, Smitty in the nuts in Purdue, then that's what you got to do. Because, hey, listen, man, that's one game. It's not going to affect you getting into the tournament, but you got to send a strong message. And I know, they took care of that back room, whatever, but no, man, I think the old Izzo needs to kind of reappear, and he needs to embrace a couple of these new things in the landscape of college basketball.
I think he was even quoted as saying he can't do some of the stuff he used to do back then because he'd probably get sued. So, I mean, look at the state of today's kids compared to back then. Long gone are the days where Andre Hudson, when he came up and got the war drill started there at Michigan State. Back when all the Flintstones and all the Final Four started happening, and when everything was about Michigan State and are they now a blue blood? But then since then we haven't had anything, and now we're 26 years in waiting. And now you're behind Michigan, and it seems to be some other of the Big Ten now, because we're hanging our hat on what happened in the past and haven't made enough changes to make ourselves relevant for the future.
Yeah, well, and you're still going to have, Purdue, Wisconsin, Iowa. Those guys are always going to have good, solid basketball programs.
But don't get me wrong. If they're for hanging Sweet 16 banners for the rest of the century, then Godspeed. But I think we're looking for Final Fours and titles.
Yeah, absolutely. And if Sweet 16 is good enough, don't cry when Michigan is hoisting banners up at Chrysler.
Well, and again, how many teams are in the Big Ten now? 25. I mean, it's not like you've just got a handful of teams that you can weed out and be like, okay, it's going to be our turn, because nope, it's not the way. That's not how it works.
Right, the Big Ten and then some.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Tom. Before we get out of here, we do have to talk about the elephant in the room. We talked about it earlier on. Last night, the Red Wings lost 5-3 to the Devils at Little Caesar Arena, making it officially mathematical. The Red Wings have missed the Stanley Cup playoffs for a 10th consecutive season. It is the longest drought in the franchise's history. The brutal part about this is that the Buffalo Sabres have finally snapped their 14-year streak of not making the playoffs. So now this leaves Detroit holding the bag with the longest active playoff drought. And for the third straight year, Tom, they had a late season collapse. In January, this team had a 12-point playoff cushion. We're tied for first. Then came the blown third period leads in March and April. Tom, I'd like to give your brief input to start this section.
Yeah, so I watched the post game after the New Jersey game or whatever, right? Watched the post game presser. Detroit Red Wings always post that up on YouTube, and it's really, for me, it's really insightful to listen to Todd McClellan talk. You know, he's a very not gonna try and put any kind of spin on anything. Like he'll tell you what he really thinks, and it's kind of a breath of fresh air, to be honest with you. I think it's probably premature to try and get into what happened, and analyze what they need to do next. And we can talk about what happened. What happened is, you were riding John Gibson, who was standing on his head a lot of nights, who probably made the defense look a lot better than what they were. And the guy just started to wear down, and it's going to happen, especially with Talbot missing games, and they weren't really sure about him. And you got to wonder, why didn't Kosa come up and play some minutes, get some minutes in net for the Wings, and maybe give Gibson a breather.
Well, but 91 points isn't bad in most seasons, though.
Yeah, well, and I hear people talking about, well, if we were in the West, well, yeah, if you were in the West, and if my granny had a cup of coffee today, she'd still be 6 feet under.
Hey, long hours are days of the West, and the Red Wings and Blues, and those rivalries from the old days, and being able to see Colorado more than once or twice in a year too, back in that rivalry time as well.
Well, no, and I miss those games, and even like with the Dallas Stars. But here's the reality. Yeah, there's a lot of have-nots in the West. But let me tell you, if the Red Wings manage to eke their way into the playoffs in the Western Conference, they're getting either they're getting either Colorado or Dallas, and they're going to get their souls crushed. So, it is what it is. And listen, they had this division wrapped up. A 12-game lead with basically 2.5 months left.
Yeah, come on, man. I've got a quick stat for you here. They were minus 500 to make the playoffs on January 26th. And after that, they went 9-14-4. So at what point does this Yzer plan become the Yzer excuse?
Everybody's got an answer for that, and it all kind of depends. If you're a hockey elitist, just stick with the plan. You don't know puck, stop criticizing. And if you say anything against the Golden Boy, hey, listen, I loved him as a player. He was a great player. I mean, this guy, I remember after he had, the surgery on his shin bone, where basically they had to fuse it back together, cut it in half and fuse it back together. And this guy he walked into the Joe Louis Arena 2002, walked in with a cane. I was at the game. It was against Carolina. My dad and I went to watch it up in the nosebleeds, and he walked in with a cane and ended up, playing a lot of third and fourth line minutes, but that dude was out there giving it his all. So never take away from the fact that he was a heck of a player. And I don't think he's like malicious or anything like that. That's just not in his DNA, but I know he's stubborn. We all know he's stubborn. Some things are going to have to change. And we'll talk about, I really feel like it's important to kind of just let the playoffs happen and maybe revisit what they do next once we get into May, June, whenever the playoffs end now. Good grief, man. That is one long season. But
I don't think it was much of a team when he came in. And so a lot of it has to do that not enough has been done. And he has been here for 7 of these 10 missed seasons, I believe.
Yep. Yeah, no, and that's true. And you know, I mean, there were a lot of draft picks that Ken Holland traded away for players because Mr. Ilitch, Mike Ilitch, was insistent that they needed to compete, you know, for titles. They needed to be in the playoffs. And what's ironic, you mentioned the 10-year streak without. That comes on the heels of them setting the record for most consecutive years. They passed Montreal for most consecutive years making the playoffs. And then to go through this 10-year, you know, spurt where, but, you know, listen, it's a salary cap. And people can point at Chris Ilitch and say, oh, he's cheap. He's not cheap. I mean, the last couple of years, they've spent right up to the cap. I mean, so the resources are there. The reality is it takes time for prospects to develop, and sometimes you hit on them and sometimes you don't. And I think they've got some decent prospects, but outside of Sider, I don't see a lot of superstar potential yet. You know, we'll see. We've got a kid coming up from Michigan State who, you know, projects to be a really good goalie. You know, Kosa, we don't know what we've got there. So it's hard to say. The question mark continues to be, what are you doing with trades and free agents in terms of how are you assessing and assessing the talent that you're trying to bring in through trades and free agent acquisitions? Now, again, a lot of the hockey folks will tell you the free agent market isn't great. Most teams, if they've got a solid player, are going to try and re-sign them and trade them at least for some assets later on. So the trade market is pretty much where you've got to make your money. But I don't know that since I think it was Mike Howe was leading the pro scouting department, and he retired right about the time Yzerman came on board, and they have not had a genuine leader in pro scouting since then. Now, Chris Draper kind of wears a hat, but he's really focused on amateur scouting, and they've done a pretty good job with amateur scouting. What they haven't done a good job with is pro scouting. You know, DeBrincat fell in their laps and was willing to take a pay cut to play for his home team. And, you know, and he's been great. 40 goal season. Good grief, man. Yeah. He's been awesome.
Yep.
But the reality is, yeah, this team was a disappointment down the stretch. And, you know, Todd McClellan, we'll just let him tell it like it is.
When we went to training camp, we had 3 goals in mind. One was to get physically harder to play against. The second was to build up the resilience and the mental toughness. And the third one was game management. And I think I thought we were making gains in those areas. But since the Olympic break, we didn't have much of that. And it ended up costing us. So that starts with me. That starts with the coaching staff. That's on us. It's just a microcosm of the year, really. And where we are as an organization, we have to get better top to bottom and do things, execute better. We do.
Well, and again, with bringing Yzerman in, we're also hopeful for the quick turnaround because of what happened down in Tampa Bay. Too, and with how good Tampa Bay got. And so you're bringing him in thinking, okay, the prodigal son has returned and now we're going to be saved. Yeah. And away we go. Hockeytown's back, and we haven't seen anything but spitting and sputtering or high hopefuls and then fade away there at the end. You know, you can't go in October wondering about another March collapse. So it seems like some type of aggression is in store for the front office this summer. Hopefully, I think, because missing the playoffs is not acceptable for a place that's called Hockeytown.
Well, Hockeytown in name only right now. I mean, and the saddest part about it is with the 100-year anniversary, and this was the result. And you know, listen, you could look at Dylan Larkin and a lot of the guys that were available to talk to the media afterwards. And I mean, there was very, very genuine despair and disappointment in themselves and how things turned out. And I feel for those guys, and people calling for Larkin's head, and maybe a trade is a good thing all the way around for him, and maybe they need to kind of, do they rebuild or not rebuild? But again, those are things for the future. One of the questions that really, again, just inspired me in terms of my fandom of Todd McClellan was, at the end, the last home game, all the guys go out there center ice and they salute the fans with the sticks. And there were a lot of boos. I don't know if you watched the end all the way through the end, but there were a lot of boos. It wasn't quite a New York Yankee,
Yeah.
They weren't getting quite the boo bird treatment there, but there were plenty. And Todd McClellan was asked about that, and here's what he said.
Well, this is Detroit. This is Hockeytown. I've been lucky enough to be on the other side of it when they couldn't stop cheering for this team, and they're dying for that. They crave that. That's what they want. And I don't even know if they want a Stanley Cup championship anymore. They just want a team that's going to come and give them something to cheer about. And this outside noise stuff or whatever, that's inside noise. Those are our fans in our building, and they pay to watch us play, and we get paid well to perform for them. And they're fully entitled to their opinion, and we deserve their opinion. Like, there's no other way to sugarcoat it. That's what we earned.
So again, I mean, he just keeps it real. He keeps it real, and it's interesting too. And I hope that some of the other leaders in Detroit sports take note of how Todd framed that. How Todd framed the fact that the fans are paying for entertainment. They're paying with an expectation that we're going to do obviously better, and we got what we deserved.
Well, and let's take a step back real quick before we end this, and just remember too that sometimes rebuilds or quick turnarounds can be hard. I think I mentioned this last week. If you go back and watch the documentary on Joe Louis Arena and the Red Wings, it really documents the hard time they had rebuilding this team. And even when Steve Yzerman first came in here, it was still a struggle for a while. I remember growing up in school watching them get swept by Edmonton over and over and over again. So it's not like it was just, but yet we know what we're capable of, and we know what we've seen, and that's what we expect. And what do we say? What do you and I say a lot? The standard is the standard. So it's like, I mean, come on, Detroit.
What it seems like, though, Eric, and just real quick in a nutshell, what it seems like, and we talked about this a week ago, is it's just a disconnect in identity and philosophy from a leadership standpoint, starting with Steve Yzerman to the coaching staff, to Dylan Larkin, down to the fourth line guys, right? And what I mean by that is, tell me, if you were to describe the Red Wings in one or two words, what would it be? McClellan talked about 3 goals going into Traverse City in the preseason. And one of those things was they wanted to be a whole lot more physical. They wanted to be hard to play against. And they really wanted to build the resiliency in the old brain housing group here, right? And I didn't see that.
I know, but I think one thing you got to do, let's get enough good players to make sure that we're not giving up goals on goals on goals on goals. Let's solidify the defense and let's make sure our offense is playing defense as well. Because, like, again, earlier on when we were talking, we can teach people to score. We can't teach them all to do the other side of the game.
Right. Well, and again, we'll go back to this most recent game. 2 of those goals were complete mental lapses. The first goal and the fourth goal, and Larkin talked about the fourth goal, and he owned it, right? He owned it. It was his assignment that got blown. Sider goes in, he pinches in deep, and it's Larkin's job to come back and cover on the defensive side, and he pinched in as well. And the next thing you know, it's a 2-on-1 coming back the other way, and they score, and that's how they scored the first goal as well. So those are mental lapses, and McClellan's like, you can't point at one guy for that. I mean, Larkin has been great for them for the most part this season, but there's a leadership communication disconnect across that organization. They have to decide what we're for. What are we for? And it's got to start at the executive, and then the scouts have got to find those players. And what we see is a lot of the same kind of players that don't fit that mold, with the exception of Perron. But I mean, Perron is like on his last years of playing pro hockey.
Well, back when they finally got cohesive and started winning, it happened when they finally went and they got Yzerman and the rest of them to start playing defense, because they could score and they could score and they could win President's trophies, but they couldn't. What'd they do? Lose to San Jose in the first round one year? So I mean, the offense was always there. You just couldn't. You couldn't play defense. And look at the back in the days of the Red Devils in the left wing lock. I think they swept the Red Wings in the finals with that one year. And so, I mean, you've got to get these players in that are bought in to the standard of being, like you said, we need some we need some Bob Proberts to go with the Yzermans. We need, we need the hard nose. We need that guy that, when he's ready to fight, that the stands, everyone's standing up and waving the towels because, he's about to put on a show, and then everyone's going out there and play hockey. And have the skill level both ends.
One of the things people forget about Proby is he had, fists of granite, but he had really soft hands. He was a guy who could score some goals for you. And, he wasn't a one-trick pony. Bob Probert could go out there and he could score some goals and make some space. They haven't had, one of the problems is they haven't had a true power forward since Brendan Shanahan, it feels like.
I would love to have another Darren McCarty.
Another guy who could score a timely goal, Yeah, for sure.
But when needed, he's your brother.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Well, that's why it was nice to see Derek Shine actually get some minutes there down the stretch.
Yeah.
To kind of come in and and he wasn't taking any dumb penalties or whatever. Kane took worse penalties than Derek Shine did. But he was out there playing hard, playing physical. And is he going to blow up any stat sheet anytime soon? No, probably not. He scored his first NHL goal, toward the end of the year. But again, having that physical presence and somebody that's out there that can play a decent game, who says, yeah, you're not just going to run my captain. You're not going to just run anybody out here. I will knock the living stuffing right out of you. We're going to go old time hockey if need be. But yeah, I mean, they've got to decide on an identity, and there's going to be time this offseason to think about that. But whatever that is, whatever Yzerman, wants this team to be, what he wants them to be for, that's got to get translated to the scouts when they're scouting, professionals, the pro scouting. They've got to find him. And listen, Kurt Maltby, great player, in his own right, as far as like the role that he had, he played it well. But I mean, he's one of the guys that's got the biggest voice in the room as far as pro scouting goes. And then Chris Yzerman is the other guy, Steve's brother is in there to kind of help move things along. But you got to really ask some questions about what are we doing there?
Right.
And it's got to be hard, man. These were teammates and his brother. And, you got Lidstrom and Draper and all these guys that meant so much to the team. But you've really got to set that aside, and you've got to be objective and really evaluate your front office. And for McClellan, he's really got to look at his coaches too, because, there's room for improvement there with some of his associate coaches, and obviously plenty to talk about as far as, some roster moves that probably need to be made.
Scotty Bowman's not coming back. So you got to find somebody that's who's the hockey Dusty May.
Well, and I don't know that you need to move away from McClellan at all.
Not
I think he's a
no.
really good coach.
I think you could stick with that.
But I think he's got to look at his own coaching staff and probably make some changes there. Especially some of their plays through the neutral zone. Getting into the neutral zone was such a challenge for them.
Right.
And then even their play through the neutral zone, wasn't inspiring at all. So,
well, hey, before we sign off for this week, you got anything you're working on for next week? Anything coming up? I know we missed Jared this week. So I know Jared's going to do something about we got the draft coming up. I know I'm going to have some tidbits for him. I got to get into his Cincinnati bag a little bit.
Well, listen, if Jared, there's two things Jared can definitely, he enlightens me on things all the time. When we get outside of, I'm a homer, man. So when we get outside of Detroit, the Lions, I mean, I know a couple of guys, right? I watch a little bit of football.
Yeah.
That's about, if it's not NFC North, I'm really not paying a whole lot of attention. But look, Jared's dialed in, and pro basketball, we're getting ready for the playoffs. So This is where, you and Jared are going to be able to have some conversations. Again, I'm a homer, man. I really,
Yeah,
I don't care. I just love watching the Pistons.
And we're getting into the boys of summer, so obviously we'll have plenty of MLB topics to get through as the season goes through, and watch the up and downs of the Tigers and everyone else, and see what other frustrations happen upon the season, or maybe things get cleared up and it becomes something fun to watch.
Well, and we've got high school baseball softball getting ready to happen here in the area. I mean, you've got the Gaylord softball team, the girls there, the Blue Devils coming off, some championships, and, are they going to be able to repeat Mansalona right here in my backyard? And, excited about what's going to happen there with the Ironmen.
Yeah, we've got some exciting things to announce down the road.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of good stuff going on, and, a lot of these baseball games going to be available here too, online. So hopefully we'll be able to pass on some of the information on that down the road too. Once they get ready to start playing some games, we'll get you pointed in the right direction so you can watch some of those. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, folks, that'll do it for us this week. We thank you for joining us again. Jared should be back here next week. For Tom Clementson, my partner this week, I am Eric Huffman. Thank you for joining us on Fans Without Credentials. We are just two Gen X Jedis and a Padawan learner just talking sports and having a great time. So, yes, sir. Never forget. Thanks again. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Like and subscribe, and comment. Send your questions. See you next week.